Malta's party leaders hold first ever debate at the University of Malta. Russia's Ukraine invasion could cost Malta up to 200 million euros, and SILVIO SCHEMBRI files a police report over a possible bomb threat. All this and more on today's episode of Lovin Daily. Hello Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. I'm Julian Bonnici. Joining me today is Yannick. Obviously nowhere else to start today but not other than the university debate between Malta's political leaders. Jan, how did that all go down?
Yeah, so the leaders of Malta's political parties met today at a university for the debate, the university debate. It's a permanent fixture in Malta's election campaigns. It was particularly special this time around because it was the first time Prime Minister Robert Abela and opposition leader Bernard Grech met in a debate. They were also joined by Ivan Grech-Mintoff from ABBA, Carmel Cacapardo from ADPD, and Paul Salamone from the Partito Popolare. As usual, it was disappointing that the crowd, it sounded like it was more like a football match or a mass meeting than a debate, something you kind of don't expect at the University of Malta. That said, we've gotten used to it now. It's what happens every time. Given the lack of exposures that the smaller parties get, it was a good opportunity to hear some of their proposals, hear them out. They did land a couple of good punches. However, at least personally, I feel that no one would have been kind of convinced necessarily to vote for them, given the lack of detail on many of the questions they were asked. As for the Prime Minister and leader of the opposition, again, it felt like they didn't think they'd get much out of the debate and decided just to base themselves on sound bites, on kind of trying to get these little clips to use on Facebook later. They all emphasized that they were against abortion. For example, we had Bernard Grech calling for a suspension of campaigning next Saturday for everyone to join in a march of solidarity in favor of Ukraine. I guess in general you can say Abela tried to paint Grech as being unprepared, whereas Grech's main push was that Abela lacked kind of the experience required and gravitas to lead the country. I don't know, what did you feel about?
Well, so I think everybody was sort of waiting to see how Robert Abela would also act in this debate atmosphere. As we've seen with Abela, usually, he's very good at maybe transmitting the message, but once that message is attacked, he sort of crumbles under the pressure. Today, to be honest, I thought he was actually really well trained to handle all the attacks coming from all different sides. But as you were saying, it did feel, that both of them were more looking towards sound bites and stuff like that, really to just sort of get going. Bernard Grech, I have to say, spoke actually really well about the environment. I thought he was really clear on that and actually gave some interesting proposals. But as you said, particularly with so much going on, right, with the government, it was really an opportunity, his first time on the public stage, to really land some killer blows at this, in the first debate of the campaign in front of all those students. On a small note on the university crowd, yeah, to be honest, super shocking. These are meant to be the brightest and the best, really, of the country. And if this is what the future is looking like, I'm not really hopeful for our political future. Yasmin El-Ludo, amazing shout out to her. She was a really good moderator, I felt, throughout the debate, and really actually handled the crowd well. So really well done. Just some small notes on the small parties, if I may. There were some, I think they all, managed to sort of make their impression. But as you're saying, some of them did seem unprepared. I think when Ivan Grech-Mintoff, for example, didn't even answer a question because he didn't want to waste time on it, or the way he spoke about transport, I think it really just shows maybe sometimes they're not really ready.
Single issue party.
Yes, yeah. You know what I mean? It's a bit too much single issue. It's a bit, and really, maybe that's why third parties, I think, are less than 1% in the polls at the moment. Carmel Cacapardo, on his part, though, did speak very well at some points. I did think so. On to our next story. The Russian government's invasion of Ukraine could cost Malta up to 200 million euros. Finance Minister Clyde Caruana has revealed. Speaking during a debate held by the Malta Chamber of Commerce earlier today, he said, I am worried about the war. I am more worried, about the war than I was worried about COVID-19 in economic terms. This is not just a war with bombs, but it's an economic war that it will impact everyone and not just the small. Basically, for those of you who don't know, Ukraine and Russia are considered, the breadbasket of the world. Really, they provide a wealth of grains, cereals, oils, wheat, and flour across the entire world. It's important for animal feed. It's also important, for helping produce our bread in the country. So expect price hikes in that regard. Malta is also an island nation, so importing is already a massive challenge. Where you saw with COVID, how much that sort of affected Malta, and it seems like everything is going to be a lot worse. Obviously, I'm not really exactly sure where Clive Caruana got this 200 million euro figure, to be honest. And there was also some error on miscommunication on his part during the thing. I really don't know. I'm sort of waiting to see what the cost will actually be, and maybe he's just sort of stoking some fear, and preparing some people for the worst that's going to come in the coming year.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot of uncertainty, especially given that no one knows exactly how this is going to pan out, how long it's going to take, whether it's going to escalate. So you're right. I guess the number at this point is just an estimate and probably could go up or down depending on how things develop. I thought I'd like to go back to the debate. It was also interesting at the point what Carmel Cacabardo said, how kind of everyone is still promising a lot of pledges when there is this uncertainty about what the economy is going to look like in a couple of months. On to our next story, also about the Ukraine. Local food producers Foster Clark have donated 23 tons of food to the Ukraine. Donations basically amount to about 2 million serving of food and drink. The shipment is already en route to Poland, where it's being transported by Atrans, another local company that responded to Foster Clark's call for help. Once in Poland, it will be distributed by the European Food Bank Federation to refugees fleeing Ukraine. As we know, as of the 9th March, 2.1 million people have been displaced from the Ukraine in what is a horrible, horrible conflict, and it has left a huge human toll. Sadly, it looks like the worst is still to come, so we can probably expect a lot more people to flee their homes in Ukraine. So there's a great need for all forms of assistance, from food to everything else. So a great initiative on the part of Foster Clark. Hopefully we'll see more of them.
And what that 2.1 million figure of refugees, almost ignores is the amount of people who have been displaced within the country who haven't left yet, right? We've been seeing so many people fleeing their homes already, leaving nothing. These are all going to become refugees one day, and it's really nice to sort of see, Maltese companies come together, actually driving all the way up to the Polish-Ukrainian border to help refugees in crisis. I mean, you said there was 2 million servings, so think about it. Just with this one incredible cargo, literally they'll be able to feed all the refugees, for one meal, which is a really impressive thing. So really well done on Foster Clark and Atrans for playing their part. On to our next story. Economy Minister SILVIO SCHEMBRI has reported a man straight to the police commissioner over a Facebook comment. The man left the comment under a Talk MT report on a press conference that SCHEMBRI gave to criticize the Nationalist Party's electoral promises for the business community. The article was titled Mal PN ma tafx tieħu imma tafx joħodlok. In English, that's with the PN, you don't know what you're going to take, but you know what they're going to take from you, with a quote allegedly attributed to a citizen he spoke to. One man commented under the article, Miak tista si bomba taħt il-karozza. With you, one can expect to find a bomb under the car. In what appeared to be sort of a bit of a political retort, referencing, obviously, as we all know, the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia. However, SCHEMBRI saw things very differently and described the comment as a serious threat. People found guilty, it should be noted, of either of the offence could be subject of a jail term between 1 and 5 years, and even to a fine not exceeding 30,000. It's actually quite a lot of thing. There's no clause in the bill which actually clarifies what constitutes an offensive or threatening words. So we'll actually have to see how the police act in these cases. For myself, particularly given SCHEMBRI's comments on the Daphne Caruana Galizia assassination prior to Jürgen Fenech's arrest, I'm really, I'll mince my words for the time being on what I actually think about his report.
I won't. As in, obviously the minister is free to interpret comments the way he likes, but I can't help but feel that this kind of trivializes when people are threatened online. It seems to me that it was clear what the commenter was referring to, and this is just an attempt by SCHEMBRI to get some political mileage in the headline, saying he's reported a threat to the police on the eve of an election. Hopefully I'm wrong, but it feels very much that way from where I'm standing. On to our final story. Malta officially has its first virtual citizen, and her name is Maria. So Maria is an AI assistant that will be there basically to answer tourist questions during their stay in Malta. The initiative was launched today by Visit Malta during a press conference launching its virtual tourism roadmap. Basically what Maria will do is provide tourists with information about Malta, about everything from places to its traditions. She's only a month old. Obviously, as an AI assistant, she will need to learn about Malta and about the things that she's going to be asked. It's a collaboration between Visit Malta and Reimagine AI. And basically the way it will work is that it will be available on a mobile app in various different languages that people can download, tourists can download, and when they're in Malta going out and about, they can have this virtual assistant augmenting and enhancing their experience of what they're seeing and kind of providing them with more information that they might not know.
A really, really cool project. Let's hope she's not too self-learning. In a week's time, she might have a go back to your country setting, for users who are bothering her. But jokes aside, it's a really cool project, and hey, it's going to help tourists get around Malta. It's always going to be something I'll get behind. That's it for us just for now. If you're going to just stay tuned for a bit, we've got a really interesting interview with PN candidate Jason Azzopardi. He's an MP who's also the lawyer on the Daphne Caruana Galizia case and running on the 4th and 9th districts. Stay tuned after the short break. Hello everyone, welcome back to Lovin Daily. With us we have MP Jason Azzopardi. He's a PN candidate on the 4th and 9th districts. Hi Jason, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks to you for the invite. Hello everyone.
Alright, so listen, I think there's only one place to start this interview. Today there was the university debate, the first leaders debate in the general election. The first time Robert Abela and Bernard Gregg have ever met. What did you think about the debate? What were your main takeaways from it?
First of all, I genuinely believe that Bernard Gregg grew during the debate and came out stronger. I could see and glean Bernard Gregg being much more assertive, much more rational, Bernard Gregg being much more leadership style. Robert Abela, unfortunately, came across as very immature and superficial and cheap at some point, at some instances. Definitely, Bernard Gregg was able to counter and nip in the bud the spin and the lies being, let's say, spun by Robert Abela about various proposals of the Nationalist Party, because we do have an electoral program. After 3 weeks, the Labour Party hasn't yet got one. So that's number one for sure. Number two, what came out as well, and I say this with a little bit of sadness, if I may. Towards the end of the debate, Bernard Gregg made a heartfelt appeal. Objectively, let's meet on Saturday. All of us, whether it's blue, red, yellow, or green, whatever. And we join forces together, all of us. We stop campaigning and we show a sign of solidarity towards the Ukrainian people who are going through this tremendous tragedy of a war. Robert Abela avoided. Robert Abela decided not to decide. He didn't take a stand. This is not about partisan politics. And something that really upset me, as soon as Bernard Gregg was opening his mouth, before even starting to speak, the Labour supporters, the Rente crowd, started booing. That's not a mature approach. I would say that Bernard Gregg came out on top.
So actually, you mentioned a bit, okay, the boos and the jeers. I think everyone heard it during the debate. Obviously, we're hearing most of the students in that hall, at least, cheering Robert Abela mainly. There were obviously some cheers for Bernard Gregg, but also some boos in there. Does that worry you maybe ahead of the election? Maybe that's what the feeling of students is?
I would have preferred personally having a much more serene debate, so that there would be more, let's say, an atmosphere more conducive to reflection. But be that as it may, even though there was a hostile environment at one point, especially at the beginning, towards Bernard Gregg, And that's something that I really could see. He wasn't at all flustered. He wasn't at all distracted. He stood his ground, was very assertive. He came out with detail, even quoting the electoral program, something that the Labour Party couldn't. For example, it's nonsense when Robert Abela says that our proposal for a trackless tram means more bendy buses. It's nonsense, it's a lie. When Robert Abela rubbished Bernard Grech about the IVF proposals we have and which he has copied, which Labour Party have copied. I mean, honestly, when you compare, and now I realize even more why Robert Abela has been avoiding the debate like the plague for the last 2 years, we today could see the reason why.
Okay, so just to move on a little bit, so a lot of people out there might know you obviously as a very high-profile lawyer in the Daphne Caruana Galizia case, but there are many voters who might not. Can you tell them a little bit about who Jason Azzopardi is and what he stands for?
Well, very briefly, I'm a 50-year-old lawyer, as you said. I hail from Paula, son of a dockyard worker, so that is basically the forma mentis, my mindset, being brought up in a family of meager means. I know what hard work means. I know the sacrifices that my parents had to go through in order to give me and my brother good education in a church school. And that's something that forged my character during the church school dispute, the church-state dispute in 1984 when I was still in secondary school. So seeing my mother, who was already sick, she was ill with cancer, attending the parent demonstrations and protests in favor of the church schools in 1984. I remember once my mother was running a fever. She was having chemotherapy, and I asked her, I was a 13-year-old, Mother, why are you going this afternoon? And she told me, I still remember the thing. I was at home, told me, now you cannot understand, later on you will understand. Anyway, time passed, I entered politics without ever dreaming of being a candidate. It was Guido De Marco who encouraged me to enter politics. I started from 17 years as a secretary to the Nationalist Party committee in Paula. I went up through the ranks. I learned, I did mistakes, I learned, I fell, I got up, I got bruised, I got up, anyway, like many other people. And what do I stand for? The fact that I hail from a working class district, I mean, it's the Paula area, Tarshin area, the 4th district, helps me empathize more with the people I'm meeting who are suffering the brunt of the cost of living. There are families with whom I shed a tear, yes, I have to admit. They share with me their predicament about not being able to afford buying vegetables to do a simple soup, what we call in Maltese the soppa tal-armla, the very basic one. So, because it has become too expensive beyond their reach, because they are living on a pension. So my fighting against corruption, it's not simply because on an ideal basis, but because I could see and I can see the effect of corruption, meaning robbing money, stealing money from the mouth of those who are most in need. For instance, we are wasting every month 40 million, we are being robbed, 40 million euro every month being paid to SOCAR, the intermediary, unnecessary, in the electrogas contract. Those 40 million are being paid every month, and we can avoid that. That's basically corruption, bribes, every month. But just imagine those 40 million, which Daphne Caruana Galizia was murdered for, when she was about to reveal much more corruption in the electrogas contract, which Robert Abela avoided like the plague during today's debate at university. But when Daphne Caruana Galizia was murdered, I got even more angry. I was livid, because I could see the effects of corruption, which is not just stealing, waste of money, squandering of public funds, but also it leaves victims. It creates victims. A mother, a wife, was killed, brutally murdered. And my experience during the court case, during the past few years, was precisely this. The intricate web of organized criminality which has infiltrated the Labour Party, where politicians have become criminals and criminals have entered politics, have entered the corridors of power in Castile. So yes, that made me even more determined to fight. I'm not Superman. I'm not doing this on my own. I mean, we are maybe a few, but getting stronger and more in number, definitely. We started half a dozen people meeting in monthly vigils, and you know what happened when the November 19 protest took place in the streets. They brought down the most popular prime minister, the strongest, the Invictus he thought he was, thanks to civil society Republica. And so that is something that keeps me going. The fight for justice means the fight for the worker, because fighting corruption ensures that the money goes and is distributed in a socially just manner.
That's interesting. So obviously something about you're on the 4th and 9th district this time. You know, these are two very different districts, different issues. Do you see sort of a commonality in the issues people are facing on both sides at the moment?
So I've been contesting the 4th district since 1996, being elected since 1998. I was elected at the age of 27. I was the youngest MP at the time. This is the first time I was asked to also contest the 9th district. Completely different in many aspects, but there is something that is striking. The more home visits I am carrying out, and I started daily, almost daily home visits last year. I remember during the summer heat wave, I was melting like an ice cube, doing home visits. In Tarshin, I remember, it was July. But something that came across, at the beginning it was summer, the first glimpse of complaints about cost of living. I was taken for a ride when I brought it up in Parliament, and I was accused of being negative and scaremongering and blah blah. Today everyone agrees it's the number one concern. Surveys show that the number one concern of people is cost of living, followed closely by corruption. Those are the two main concerns of people. And something that is common to both, actually it's common to everyone, because we compare notes, even candidates, whether it's from Gozo, whether it's from the south, whether it's from the north of Malta. We compare notes. And I can vouch, yes. Yesterday I was doing home visits in Tarshin, the day before in Vgura. Something that comes across, cost of living, sleaze, arrogance. We cannot afford having another 5 years of this lease. I went to somebody meeting somebody in Vgura about 3 weeks ago. And he told me, we're sitting around his kitchen table, he told me, Dot, no offense meant, but know this. Just as much as in 2013, there was reason, strong reason for the Labour Party to be elected, just as much, even more so, today there is more than enough reason for the Nationalist Party to come back into government. Another anecdote I want to share. I was doing home visits in Tarshin about 2 weeks ago. It was St. Francis Street, which is a very long street near the Rainbows Football Club. And I met a couple, early 60s. And she told me this phrase, which inspired me to write an article, which I did in an English daily. She told me, an early 60s couple, very normal, ordinary people, all right? She told me, Dot, ser ulna l-futur. They have stolen our future from us. And it is so true. They have literally managed to steal our past. Anton Refalo getting away with murder, stealing an historic artifact. If it had been me or you, would have been hauled in front of the court and the full force of the law being thrown upon us like a ton of bricks. But Anton Refalo got away with it because Roberta Bella decided to protect him. But they have stolen our future because meeting youths, even the surveys, August of last year, survey came out where what, 70% plus, almost 74%? That makes it almost 2/3, right, of youths. This is something that saddens me. Want to leave the country. Just imagine, I mean, the biggest asset you have, youths, their zeal, their idealism, their creativity, their enthusiasm. they want to leave because they can't see a future in this country of ours, whether it's because of corruption, whether it's because of the environment being raped. And that is something that's coming across in houses. So cost of living, corruption, unbridled construction, overdevelopment, yes.
But on this point, right, so obviously we're talking about corruption, we're talking about sleaze and stuff like that, right? My memory, I mean, I was working at the time, 2017, you know, these sort of similar allegations were thrown at the government time and time again. The Labour Party actually won the election with an even larger majority at the end of it. Current surveys don't really give the PN much hope. You know, there are some that could say that the gap might be as much as 50,000, right? What do you think is going to change, you know? Has there been a change in feeling?
Yes,
you
completely.
know?
Completely. Number one, surveys 40, 50,000. With all due respect to the guy who's carrying out these surveys, who's getting thousands of euro in public monies every month from direct orders, and he's been getting them for the last almost 10 years. With all due respect, he's not objective and cannot be relied upon. The real survey is, of course, the 26th March one. But in the meantime, knocking on the doors of literally every family, when I knock, I don't, you know, skip any door. I literally carpet bombing every door. Whoever wants opens and greets me or whatever. I can safely say that many more people are opening their doors, inviting us, not just Jason Azzopardi, but inviting the Nationalist Party candidates much more than in the last two elections. Now, to what extent, numbers, I will be presumptuous to say that's not my brief. However, the election is not yet over. There's almost 2.5 weeks left, and a lot can happen, a lot can change. What I can say is this. I'm meeting people, loads of people, who tell me, 2013-17 I voted Labour, never again. In Maltese we say, nixtieq nikdem hawn ma nistax. I regret, you know, I curse the moment I allowed myself to be deceived. That's something that somebody told me recently in Gudja. Secondly, a huge number of Labour voters not wanting to vote because they are disgusted or disappointed, and I'll give you an anecdote on this. Thirdly, a good number of Labour people who are opting to positively consider, let me be objective, positively consider voting for the Nationalist Party, because the Nationalist Party has become more Labour than Labour. I'll give you an anecdote. I was in Tarshir about a month ago, Main Street, very long street, and this guy comes out, he greets me, we you know, say hello, he told me his name, and he told me, listen, Dot, you are not getting my vote. Your party is not getting my vote. But so aren't this lot. I shall be nailing my vote, my voting document, on the door. I asked why. He told me, let me tell you, I come from a Labour background. I'm a self-employed, I'm 34-year-old, I have my own business, very small business. I have not been given one direct order. Others, and he pointed towards somebody, others, il-kelma hija iffangaw, they gorged. I mean, they got more and more, again and again and again and again. And I can't compete. And he mentioned the foreign workers who are undercutting him because of the low prices they can tender, they can offer. And he told me, by the way, I am not inviting you in, because we stayed talking on the doorstep. Not out of disrespect, because even though I'm from a Labour background, don't think that I'm doing this out of spite or out of disrespect, because I do respect you, even though I don't agree with you. However, I want to speak to you, if you don't mind, outside over here, because I want the people to see that I am talking to you. It was the first ever time I had this experience, this anecdote, and we spent 22 minutes, very civil discussion, very nice discussion, and we agreed on many things, and I could see that he has a vibrant social conscience. Yes, that is an experience I am getting across the board. But I repeat, this is not just Jason Azzopardi. Many Nationalist Party candidates from all across the country are receiving these vibes, and in truth, the blunt truth is, the fact that I can go and show and quote the Nationalist Party program, but the Labour Party cannot. Actually, they invent fake news. That is something that the people, another thing, and then the lady the other day in Goudia, people are noticing that the Prime Minister is avoiding questions. The people notice the Prime Minister escaping through the side door, avoiding journalists. So that is making people think and ask, what is he hiding?
To move on a little bit, so obviously we're touching on about it, you've made a name for yourself. I think a lot of for people out there is almost this fight against corruption, against to sort of get good governance back on track. But I think probably there are many people out there who might argue that Prime Minister Robert Abela has done somewhat of a good job in fighting this, right? So if you look at maybe some reforms that have been made for the judiciary and police, some arrests that have been made, we're actually seeing some cabinet members resign from their positions, something which we didn't see in Joseph Muscat's tenure. What would you say to those people? Has there been a change or has there...
I will say to those people that those little changes that he did, he was forced to. For example, Justin Caruana, there was a whole uproar for I don't know how many weeks. And then he was forced to, not out of conviction. The arrests that took place, money laundering and corruption related, those took place only solely due to the magisterial inquiries I instituted 3 years ago on behalf of Repubblica, the civil society, which took the initiative, courageous initiative, unheard of until 3 years ago, together with Simon Busuttil and David Casa, unheard of for private citizens, to knock on the door of the duty magistrate to demand a magisterial inquiry concerning politicians in power on money laundering and corruption charges. Completely unprecedented. And those arrests and those arraignments and those criminal proceedings took place thanks to those initiatives. Third, Robert Abela had a golden opportunity last January when we presented 12 bills intended to implement the recommendations of the public inquiry on the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia. For example, having an unexplained wealth order legislation, having a new crime of criminal association of a mafia-like character, defending journalists with anti-SLAPP legislation, having a declaration in the Constitution what are the duties of government, curtailing the duties, the rights or the powers of a caretaker government during the electoral campaign. So many of these. An inquiring magistrate specifically dedicated against corruption. 12 of these. Increasing the powers of the police during arrests. 48 hours going up to 96 hours in the case of homicide and money laundering. Major crimes. Robert Abela derided us, ridiculed us, voted against. Of course, as I told my colleagues, no wonder he voted against the unexplained wealth, because of course he is the subject of much unexplained wealth. It's coming out. So he could never agree to something that could have put him under criminal investigation on that. However, back to your point, let's not forget, we are grey-listed. And we were grey-listed on his watch. We were grey-listed because of the significant corruption that he allowed to fester and the impunity he continued. Don't forget, SCHEMBRI and Konrad Mizzi, they unprecedented. The first citizens of the European Union, just imagine, the European Union has what, 500 million people? The first two citizens being banned from entering to the United States because of significant corruption in electro gas happened to be none other than SCHEMBRI and Konrad Mizzi. So that is the blunt truth about it, and it's demeaning, it's humiliating, and we see and we meet. I'm remembering somebody, a couple, a youngish couple in Goudia, the husband is an accountant for a gaming company. And he was telling me the huge difficulties they are having because of the grey listing. He was listing me the names of gaming companies that have already left because of the grey listing. And God forbid this doesn't become any worse. So I would appeal to those who are listening, even this morning's debate, this afternoon's debate, did Robert Abela come out with even one new economic activity that he's proposing? The Nationalist Party, within the first 2 hours after the campaign was announced, the election date was announced, we came out with 10 new economic niches. Just imagine, the metaverse, the artificial intelligence, the robotics. The metaverse is fantastic. It's so exciting. It's at an 800 billion euro industry in the next 3 years. Just imagine if you get 0.5% of that. But we can do it. We did it with gaming, with pharmaceuticals, with aircraft maintenance, financial services, thanks to the Nationalist Party in government. And we can do it again.
Just to wrap things up, it was a pleasure obviously speaking to you, but where can, your constituents, people who want to hear what you have to say as a candidate, where can they find you?
Okay, I'm practically very accessible. So my Facebook is what it is. I receive daily messages which I answer personally, privately, but whether it's iMessenger, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's text messages. My mobile number is public. I've never hid my mobile number. It's been always public. Emails I get every day, and I try to, before going to sleep late at night, usually it's after midnight, having answered everyone. And as I'm telling you, I'm looking forward to keep on meeting as much people as possible, many families as possible, we have a nice story to tell. We are not perfect. We are not perfect. I emphasize this. We are not perfect. But definitely we love our country much more than those who use power for their personal gain, who have dragged our name through the mud. Just imagine, 2 days ago, even this, when was it? Yesterday afternoon, the only 4 MEPs from the Socialist Party voting against the ban on the sale of passports were the Maltese MEPs, heeding instructions from Roberta Bella, whom I've asked whether it's true that after 2018 he was still an agent for the sale of passports, of the Maltese passports, till 2018, and I quoted a parliamentary question answered by Joseph Muscat. His office was an accredited agent. So potentially a conflict of interest, like potentially the conflict of interest with Christian Borch and the alleged criminality and the money laundering. Just imagine Roberta Bella, the Prime Minister, having facilitated, aided and abetted potentially money laundering with 2 major criminals or alleged criminals. And somebody in his right senses can ever think rationally, objectively, not passionately, that this person has the high moral ground to take us off the grey list? No, that answer is Bernard Gregg, and today's debate showed what metal the guy is made of.
Thank you so much, Jason, for
Thanks to
coming
you.
here. Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Let us know what you think about the interview in the comments below, and as always, have an evening full of loving.